Is that recording? I'm only on my first cup of coffee today. I could use a couple more. So now what I gotta figure out is, am I in focus? I hope I'm in focus. Welcome to The Bite Shot. I'm Joni Simon. We are here in my studio, and today I'm going to do a little Lightroom tutorial for you. Just a very sort of basic introduction to Lightroom and how I personally edit my photos. Now, this is not the gospel truth of how you have to edit your food photos. This is just my personal process, how I do things, so that hopefully you can just maybe learn a couple little tools so that when you're applying the style that you enjoy to your photos, you'll have a little bit more ammunition in your toolbox. Now, people do like to ask me, do you have to use Lightroom? Are there other softwares? There are definitely a ton of free softwares out there, but I find with something like Lightroom, it's an Adobe product, you just have a greater degree of control. So as far as, adjusting the exposure, adjusting the tone curve, there's a lot more tools in there, but additionally, you just have a lot more variation on each of the scales. So you can really get in and get nitty-gritty into how you want to alter your images and make them totally pop. So what we are editing today is actually my lunch. I was here in the studio working on some other projects for clients, and I thought, hey, my lunch doesn't look too bad, right? So I had fun putting it together, putting it in this bowl, and thought it would be a great illustration, sort of some of the basics of how I edit my photos in Lightroom. All right, so where I typically start is in cropping the photo. So this clearly is not the best placement for this bowl, because if we're looking at the rule of thirds, right, when we talk about composition, we want things to either ride these lines, these third lines. That really helps just, from an eyeball perspective, things to look extra pleasing, or stick it dead in the center. So, you could definitely square it up right in the middle, right there. That kind of looks cool, but to me, I love things just a little off center. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna close it in just like that. And you can see that third line is writing right in the middle of the bowl. Looks even on both these ends, and kapow, looks good. I like it. Now this would be fun too if you're doing some sort of text overlay or something. That would look great. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to tweak the color, because I can just tell looking at this, it's reading a little yellow. And some of that has to do with the light quality of this space where I shoot, has a little bit to do with the composition of the foods that are in this bowl, the actual color of the bowl. It's got sort of that orangey rim to it, so we're getting a little bit of that yellowish. So what I do typically is I'll come into the basic panel right here and grab that eyedropper, and then if you throw that on a neutral tone, usually like a gray is great. That's why people, if you've ever heard of gray cards, they use that to sort of calibrate their images and decide where's the white balance. But I've got some gray here in my marble, so I'm just going to throw it there, and you can see it threw in some more blues, threw in some more reds just to kind of balance that out. Now, a lot of Instagrammers really love to ride out cool tones like a boss, so feel free to throw down the blues a little bit more just with this little slider right here, or I just use the up and down. For me, I love using the keys instead of the mouse. It's just quicker. So now the next thing that I usually do is I go all the way to the very bottom into the effects panel. And this is sort of a little backwards to go kind of top to bottom. I mean, I jump around in the editing process. It's just the way my brain works. So what I like to do, because a lot of the images that I shoot here in my studio, because there is so much white surface and so many different windows, there can be a little bit of a haze on my images because I've just got light coming from so many different directions when I'm shooting in natural light. So what I'll do is I'll get onto this little dehaze section right here, and I'll usually bump it up to about a 10. That's usually where I feel pretty happy, but you can definitely slide this, and you can see, whoa, dehaze, that's too much. I mean, for my personal taste, maybe you love that, but for me, right around the 10 to 15 is a pretty happy place. Now, what I'm going to do from here is something you'll see a lot of food photographers. If you watch other food photographers do Lightroom tutorials, you will see so many of them do this, and I kind of like it. It gives your food, I don't know, just sort of this, makes it pop. So what you want to do is jump into your basics panel again. You might want to adjust your exposure. I'm actually pretty happy with the exposure here. I don't want to overexpose it because you can see like the chicken, that white in the chicken and on the bowl, you can still see the detail. We haven't haven't lost the details, which for me is an indication that this is just about the right exposure. You take it any further and it's gonna start to blow things out, if you've heard of that term. See right there, way too blown out. So we're just gonna go back to 0 on that. That feels good. So now what a lot of people will like to do is take the highlights and throw those all the way down. Now, I'm not necessarily gonna throw them all the way down, but I'm just gonna take them down a little bit. All right, and then the shadows, lift the shadows a little bit. And again, a lot of people like to go all the way and then kind of manipulate and get crazy. Me, I just kind of, especially on a bright image like this, I'm not gonna take too much out, but just kind of balance it out a little bit. Makes kind of a cool effect. And I'm gonna throw up the contrast, just a little hair. Now this is where people love to get crazy. You can see a lot of those stylized images. A lot of times people really throw contrast pretty harsh. For me, not necessarily what I go for, but definitely a cool, trendy thing to do. You can kind of experiment with the whites and the blacks. Again, I'm pretty happy. We don't need to make a ton of changes to this image. But now what I do is I get into the tone curve, and this is something that is a lot of fun to play with. This is where a lot of impact can happen. So I'll click off this menu and I'll actually grab the bottom of the curve right down here at the bottom. This is sort of where all those darks live, and I just raise it up ever so slightly. I'm not gonna go crazy because we don't wanna lose all of our detail and we don't wanna make it look too hazy again, right? Because we adjusted it with the dehaze. But just lift those blacks a little bit, just because to me this gives it more of a film quality. When you look at images that are done in digital versus film, film kind of has this warmth, this roundedness, and a lot of that you're able to get by just lifting those blacks ever so slightly out of the tone curve. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift those just a little skosh. But you can see it's a little light now, and so what I want to do is really harness in and make those shadows pop. That's where you grab then this little selector down here, right? We had this closed. Gonna open that up, and I'm gonna throw down the shadows, and it's gonna deepen those shadows. It's gonna give a nice sort of body 3D effect to all the food in that bowl. There's a lot of little interest pieces, and it's just highlighting those. It's just giving those a little bit more depth. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. Now you can also adjust the lights. Again, I feel like I properly exposed this image when I shot it, so I don't have to adjust that too much. And sometimes there'll be too many darks. I'll lift the darks a little bit, but we're just gonna leave that right there, feeling pretty good. So now where a lot of fun can happen is in the color sphere. So you can see this image, we have a lot of greens, we have a lot of oranges, yellows, a little bit of reds. So greens is usually a go-to of something that I'm gonna change right away. And where you can make a lot of impact is in this luminance scale. So I love to dial the greens down in terms of luminance. Look at that. I mean, so interesting, right? Like how that suddenly changes the quality of that image, right? Fascinating. Now, this is where you can also cheat, because sometimes your limes might be a little yellow or something like that. You just can take them and make them a bit more green or saturate them more. The colors in this are pretty good. I'm gonna bump it up just a little bit more of the bluish green as opposed to the yellowish green. And I am gonna bring the saturation though on the greens down just a skosh. So you can really kind of balance the colors. The colors are such an important part of your images. I can't even stress it enough. And now I can see there's a lot of oranges. The chicken has some orange, of course the carrots, the bowl itself. So we're gonna play with this and see if we like it illuminated more. Bring down that set. Oh, see, there we go. Yep, just bring down the luminance a little bit. It's giving it a lot more quality, a lot more depth. I'm gonna actually leave the saturation where it is, and I like the color of that orange, so I'm not gonna throw it to more of a yellow or more of a red qualityed orange. I think that looks pretty good. Pretty good, right? All right, so now we're gonna get into a little bit of sharpening. This is something that you gotta be careful with, right? You've got this little viewfinder window right here. So if you throw this all the way up thinking, I just wanna sharpen the heck out of this image, but you can see it really turns it kind of grainy, as if almost you shot it at a high ISO. So what I'm gonna do is I keep the sharpening right about here, but I don't want to sharpen the entire image, because that's really like it's sharpening not only the food, but then it's also sharpening the background, and it's just not helpful in my book. So this is a fun little trick, and this is a Mac trick. I'm sure there's a shortcut key on the PC as well. You'll have to Google that. But for Macs, if you just hit the Option key, Okay, and then you come down to masking, and what masking is doing is selecting exactly what is being sharpened on a scale. So you can see right here, everything that's in white is being sharpened. And to me, that's way too much. I don't want all of that sharpened because it's gonna really make for a noisy image. I just want sort of like the edge of the bowl and edge of some of those veggies sharpened. So right around 98 usually is actually what I do. It's just adding a little bit of sharpening right where you need it. And then you leave it right there and kapow, we've got some nice sharpness. So all things considered, I'm pretty happy with this image. Now, usually I'll continue to futz around, maybe play around a little bit with the whites, throw those up just a little touch, throw the blacks down just a little touch, maybe throw a little bit more blues at this now that we've adjusted things. You will notice as you play with contrast and whites and blacks that suddenly the colors will become way oversaturated or really change. So it's all about really looking for that balance as you are creating this image. But I'm super happy with this. I think this is looking pretty good. So now you're like, Joni, that doesn't look all that wildly different than where we started. But actually it does. So we've got the little before and after. Ready? Wait for it. Very good. So you can see that before and that after, right? Like we've got a much cleaner blue or white going on. You can really see the detail in all of the vegetables and the chicken, and it just kind of looks more generally appetizing and kind of jumps off the page more. So then from here, what I do is I go ahead and you can export this, put it wherever you would like. Put it in the subfolder of where it originated from. Let's just call this lunch because that's what it was, lunch. All right, and we export that, and once that is all exported and ready to rock, all right, and so you can just kind of see how I organize my files. This little Joni Simon Media right here is a terabyte drive that we have networked here in the house. It is redundant, so it's automatically backed up, so hopefully even if the apocalypse happens, that I still have all of my images. Go into the bite shot. And I've got stir fry lunch right here, and you can see lunch, kapow. And there's our final image. Looks pretty tasty, you guys. Oh, I dig that little shine that's there on that pea. Oh, that's the good stuff. And then I'm just gonna airdrop this to myself, and we throw that off over to Instagram, to Facebook, to wherever you wanna put it. So that is just a down and dirty little Lightroom tutorial, how I edit my images. Definitely certain images call for a lot more editing, some less, but hopefully this put a couple new tools in your toolbox. But if you are not already subscribed to this channel and you found this video at all helpful, please feel free to subscribe, because I'll be back. I don't know when I'll be back. I'm shooting a lot right now because it is the holiday season and everybody and their pet iguana needs food photos. But when I'm back, when I publish a new video, you'll be sure to be the first to catch it if you are a subscriber. And if you like this video, I wouldn't hate it if you gave it a nice little thumbs up, because that tells me you like things like this. I should keep doing things like this, keep showing up just for you. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for stopping by. You stay out of trouble, all right? And I'll see you again here soon, okay? Bye!